Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 516 of the Juicebox Podcast. On this episode of the podcast, I'm joined by fellow podcaster and author Jyn Stevens. Jyn is the host of Intermittent Fasting Stories and the Intermittent Fasting Podcast. She's also the author of a number of intermittent fasting books. Her newest one, Cleanish, Eat Mostly Clean, Live Mainly Clean, and Unlock Your Body's Natural Ability to Self-Clean, comes out in January of 2022. I've been looking for someone to come on for quite some time to explain intermittent fasting to me. Jyn does not have type 1 or type 2 diabetes, but she is a person who is very well versed in talking about it. And I've had some interesting run-ins with the fasting idea, and I wanted to understand more about it. Maybe this will help you with your life with type 1, or maybe you're the parent of a child with type 1 who's looking for a new way to eat. One way or the other, this is the next in my series of How We Eat episodes. While you're listening, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. It is incredibly difficult to compile the data needed to help people living with type 1 diabetes. That's why the T1D Exchange has asked me to ask you to consider joining the T1D Exchange. All you have to do is answer a simple survey that only lasts, it's a number of minutes. If it took you more than 10 minutes, I'd be surprised. It took me like 7 when I filled it out. You need to be a U.S. resident who has type 1 or a U.S. resident who is the caregiver of a person with type 1. That's all you need to be. And you go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox. When you get there, everything is 100% HIPAA compliant. It is completely anonymous. And the questions aren't that difficult. They're not deep, probing personal questions. They're kind of simple overview questions. But when they get answers from enough people, that data becomes important for people with type 1. I'm going to tell you a little more about it later, but please consider going to t1dexchange.org/juicebox. You'll be helping people living with type 1 diabetes, and you'll be supporting the podcast. I'll tell you more about it later. For now, I'd like you to meet Jyn.
Well, hi, I am so glad to be here. My name is Jyn Stevens, and I was an elementary teacher for 28 years, so I retired from that. Just before I retired, I wrote a little book called Delay Don't Deny about living an intermittent fasting lifestyle and ran some Facebook groups, and it turned into a full-time career. So I left teaching and now just manage intermittent fasting support groups, and wrote another book that came out in June of 2020 called Fast, Feast, Repeat, which was a New York Times bestseller. So I am loving my intermittent fasting lifestyle and have maintained an right around 80-pound loss since I first lost the weight in 2014 to 2015. So intermittent fasting has turned into my lifestyle and my career, and I just love it.
Wow. I have to say, I've been looking for someone to talk about this specific subject for a while. And it took me a lot of picking around, because you'll reach out to people who are like, I do intermittent fasting and I have this or that. And you think, okay, well, they must be used to talking about it. And then you reach out to them like, nah, I'd rather not. I'm like, geez, how can this be your thing and you don't want to talk about it? But right. I'm so happy to have found you. What's the name of your podcast?
Well, I actually have 3 podcasts.
Okay,
so
hold on a second.
As a podcaster, now you're going to think I'm crazy, because that's a lot of podcasts, right?
You know what? Then let's go backwards first for a second, because we'll get to the intermittent. People who listen are like, right away, this guy's going to start talking instead of asking about intermittent fasting. But so I want to understand first, you're a teacher,
right?
And are you a teacher who's looking to change their lifestyle and finds this thing and then opens up the support group?
Yep, that's exactly what happened. I was, like many of your listeners, I'm sure, I was a chronic dieter. I mean, I started dieting in high school before I even needed the diet, right? Because my mother was a dance teacher. And so I was always obsessed with, she was counting calories. Like in my 11th grade year, this was back in, 1984, 85. So this is how long ago it was. I took a computer programming class. We were learning BASIC. That was the name of the programming language. And I programmed a calorie counter program. So I've always had my head into diets. But over the years, as I went to college, graduated from college, my weight continued to yo-yo up and down. The yo-yos got higher. I would go up more, then I would go down more. And so it started to look like a big roller coaster over time. And eventually in 2014, I found myself at 210 pounds, which was officially obese. I had a doctorate in gifted and talented education, and, I have a master's degree in natural sciences. And I thought, I'm smart. Why can I not figure out really how to lose the weight and keep it off? And so I just always was in search of that. Thank goodness intermittent fasting has been the answer, because I've maintained in my goal range since 2015, even as I've gone through menopause. I'm now on the other side of that and still maintaining. But, it's what I was looking for all those years, and I just didn't know it.
Okay. So I have, just for context, how tall are you?
I'm 5'5".
Okay. And now you weigh more like 130-ish?
Yeah, right around there. I haven't weighed myself in years because I just go by the fit of my clothes now.
Right.
So
that must be freeing.
My clothes still fit. So
is that a freeing idea to not step on a scale?
Yes, it really, really is. Like, in context, I'm coming from the beach. I'm at the beach right now, and I've been here for 2 weeks. I'm going home tomorrow. And, I know my weight would be up if I were weighing on a scale, just because I've eaten differently. I spent a week here with family. I ate out a lot. And so, it got to me with all this lifetime of dieting, I would get on the scale and see that the number was up. Intellectually, I know, well, it's because I ate differently. I didn't gain, fat, all this fat over the course of 2 weeks at the beach. And it goes down over the next few days. But then you start having those diety thoughts like, oh, I better go on a diet. And what I learned with intermittent fasting is it all takes care of itself. You live the lifestyle. It just all works out. Like I said, so I've been maintaining my weight since 2015. If my honesty pants get a little tight, then I just realize, all right, time to maybe tighten up those eating windows a little bit, and it all works out.
Wow.
It's so much more freeing, and I lose that diet thought that I was so trapped in before.
How much of being a teacher helped you organize a support group?
100%. I'm going to tell you, the very best preparation for working with a large group of adults, I swear, is being an elementary school teacher, because you learn classroom management and how to deal with people. Little people are grow up to be big people, and they have the same personalities. And so, my skills as managing groups of people really has helped me with running the Facebook groups. I've since left Facebook. I'm no longer there, but which is a whole different story. But it really is very helpful. And also, I've realized, being an elementary teacher, it helps me write books. People are like, wow, you've written this in a way that I really understand it. And one of my friends said, gosh, I think all books should be written by teachers. and I think, that's what we're trained to do. We're trained to deliver content to people in a way that makes sense. That's my whole background.
Jyn, I talk in pictures, and I think that's why this podcast is positive for people, because I'm explaining how I use insulin for my daughter and a number of other things. And what I hear back more often from people than not is that I really understand it when you explain it. It's very easy to grasp. It's not very technical. It's true. Yeah. It's just, you're boiling it down. Yeah.
I once had an endocrinologist. Okay. Think about this. I'm an elementary teacher. I had an endocrinologist email me and say, wow, your explanation of, I don't even know what, probably I was talking about insulin and, the type 2 diabetes and fasting. This is, of course, very different from type 1 diabetes, as you know. But he said, it really helped me understand it in a way I'd never understood it before. I'm like, well, that's just wacky.
Yeah. I just recorded with an endo last week who came on to tell me that the podcast changed how they talk to their patients. And
wow.
It's very cool, but it just goes to show that some people are good at delivering a message and some people aren't. And I suspected maybe the teaching part helped you. I'm just going to stay here for one more second before we get to the fasting thing. You said you're not on Facebook anymore. Did you create your own group online somewhere else? It's not through Facebook?
I did. Mm-hmm. I did. And it's small. I had gotten up to almost 500,000 group members across my combined Facebook groups. But, Facebook started making a lot of mistakes with their artificial intelligence. In fact, just this morning, I haven't been on Facebook since March. I left March 29th is the day I walked away. And, we're recording this, 3 months later, almost to the day. But just today, when I left one of my Facebook groups still active, but run by moderators, but I haven't been there. Just today, I got a ding by Facebook, me. Obviously, it's something I posted months and months ago. But they said that I posted something that went against cybersecurity. I mean, I've not been posting on Facebook, like I said, since March. It's been over 3 months. And today, and because I'm the quote admin of the group, that goes against group. It's a ding against the group. If we get too many of those, they'll shut down the group.
Right.
And, we're an intermittent fasting support group. And so my fear was, in the fall, they started cracking down on health groups. And, we all know, the spread of quote misinformation is something they're trying to go against, but they were shutting down like essential oil groups and things like that. Like a friend of mine had a cooking group and it got shut down overnight while she was asleep and she didn't know why. But she was also, off of Facebook, like her account had been deactivated and her group of 10,000 had been shut down. So I started thinking, I did all of my work on Facebook and with one click, they could shut me down.
Right. From an algorithm.
And I don't, yeah. Based on, what did I do months ago, or even, it could have been a post I made years ago.
Someone in my group was once reported for bullying by the algorithm, and I looked and they were just sarcastically saying something to someone that everyone involved in the conversation completely understood.
Oh, we got a ding on the group. One of the moderators, and it counts more when it's a moderator and admin. That's what gets your group shut down. Mm-hmm. But one of the moderators got a ding for saying it was called bullying, and she had said to a group member, she's like, "Well, don't worry. Once you're fat adapted, fasting gets much easier." Okay. Well, the AI saw you're fat. That's in context. She's like, "Once you're fat adapted." Yeah. That's a perfectly good context. And then she appealed it and she got like a Facebook jail for like a week and it counted against the group because she was a moderator. And we're like, wait a minute, this is crazy. So I started feeling the threat of I could really lose everything I've built. You don't have email addresses of the group members. Mm-hmm. So I walked away and it feels great.
Good for you. That's excellent. So, and I agree that my Facebook page, I don't have 500,000, but there's 13,000 people in there. I only started it maybe a year and a half ago. And it's a much more niche group of people, obviously. But I have that thought sometimes, like, what if this just gets taken from me by an algorithm or by something like that? Right. It's helping all these people. How do I find them to say, I don't even know what to do? So maybe I'll have to, in the back of my mind, start figuring out what you learned so people can have a safer place. But nevertheless, I asked you on the show because I am not a good eater in general, meaning that if it's green or natural or in any way reasonably good for you, I've probably never had it before or eaten it under protest when I was 12. And my body retains water like I'm in the 7th month of a pregnancy. So if I eat too much of anything, I can wake up in the morning 4 pounds heavier. It's absolutely right. It's crazy. So I'm always and forever, and the people know listening that I'm always and forever just like messing with one thing or another, but I never do anything specifically. And then one day I run into intermittent fasting, and I have not kept up with it for, I guess, reasons that have nothing to do with how well it worked. But I went to a schedule of like eating from, I guess, 11 to 7, maybe 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And I started with like I think I might have started with like a 36-hour water fast, and I went right into intermittent, and then I must have lost 15 pounds in like a week.
Wow. Water weight drops right off.
100%. But as I was going and then I kept moving, I started testing the theory. I started acting like a scientist. I was like, I'm going to eat everything in between this gap of time. And it was stuff that I don't even normally eat, stuff that I would not consider good for you. And I couldn't gain weight.
Right.
And so I don't understand that. And then here's the other side of it. My daughter's had type 1 diabetes since she's 2. She's 17 now. This podcast reaches a lot of people who use insulin and have type 1 and type 2 diabetes. When my daughter wakes up in the morning, and overnight, her blood sugars are absolutely fantastic because there's no fast-acting insulin in her, and there's no food, that kind of stuff. And it hit me one day, Arden fasts, my daughter, just not on the schedule you would think of. She basically goes to bed at 10 p.m. and doesn't really wake up and start eating till 9 or 10 a.m. She's basically a 12-12 eater.
Right.
And her blood sugars are super stable in that time and no lows, like just very stable. So I'm looking for somebody to really explain the nuts and bolts of intermittent fasting, how it works. And I think you might be the person. So whatever it is you tell people about it, I'd love it if you could tell my listeners now.
Well, you've seen it in action in your daughter. Her blood sugar is very stable because she's not taking in any fuel while she's sleeping, and her body's just running right along. Our bodies can be fueled by what we're taking in or consuming, or our bodies can be fueled from it within, right? So within, like, let's say you're fasting, there are two places your body can get your fuel. One would be glycogen stores. I mean, how basic do I need to get into this?
No, like in your liver. Your liver holds glycogen.
Yeah. It's your liver. Your liver holds glycogen. Your muscles hold glycogen.
Right.
So, if nothing's coming in, that's the first place your body's going to turn. And it's going to, it tends to save the glycogen in your muscles for activity, but it'll dip into that liver glycogen. And if still nothing is coming in, oh, and by the way, that's why you may see during a fast, you may see blood sugar go up. And you might think, well, how is this possible? I haven't eaten anything. Why is my blood sugar up? Well, that's because your liver is releasing the glycogen and it's going into your bloodstream. So you have to be aware of that. Your blood sugar can go up while you're fasting because it's coming from within your body. Mm-hmm. So once your liver gets depleted of glycogen to a certain degree, your body's like, all right, we got to do something else. We got to get some more fuel. And that's when it starts tapping into your fat stores for fuel. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Let me drink some coffee. I'm drinking my black coffee right now.
Mm-hmm.
So you start tapping into your fat stores for fuel, and your body really has a lot of fat stores on board, and it can keep you going for a long time. And it can also make ketones out of your fat stores. That fuels your brain very well. This is not the same as, diabetic ketoacidosis, obviously, which is something you'll have to watch out for, but you feel great. So your brain has a steady source of fuel from the ketones that are being produced. And, a lot of people think that you only make ketones if you're on the keto diet, and that's not true. Fasting is very ketogenic. And so, I eat carbs in my eating window every day, but during the fast, I find myself, dipping into ketosis, as I get into the later part of the fast, before my eating window opens. Mm-hmm. So I have great mental clarity and great sustained energy during the day, for whatever I need. So I really think our bodies are meant to be metabolically flexible like this. If you think about the standard way that we've been really told to eat for the past few decades, breakfast is, quote, the most important meal of the day, and you need to eat to boost your metabolism, and all these things we've been told. So people are eating like 6 times a day, snacks in between. We're constantly putting sources of energy into our body. And so we never have to tap into our stored fat for fuel.
Right. Yeah. You're just always staying on, you're always keeping the gas tank full. So you don't have to go to the reserve.
We're always in the fed state. And so we never have a chance to even, to dip into our fat stores, really. And, we're meant to be metabolically flexible, which means we're able to, change our fuel source as needed. So once your body adjusts to intermittent fasting, of course, this doesn't happen on day one, but once you adjust, your body can just do what it needs to do, and you don't feel so terrible. You feel great in the fasted state, and your body just makes that shift naturally, like it's supposed to do.
It's funny, as I was doing it, it occurred to me, I've been talking about this a lot lately, that because of the internet, you have to name things, because if they don't have a name, you can't look for them, right? But if you would have eaten like this 30 years ago, what somebody would have said, like, how do you eat? You would have said, oh, I skip breakfast and I don't eat when the sun goes down. That might be all you'd say. And that really is what you're doing, right? And you're creating this thing that you're describing, this time where your body can kind of just say, all right, now I'm going to work on your fat. I'm going to take away from the storage. And then at some point, I guess you get the storage depleted down where physically you appear more the way you're hoping to, and then you eat during the eating schedule, which puts it back in, and then you stop eating during the fasting schedule, and then your body pulls it back out again. And then you're in this kind of nice back and forth all of a sudden.
Absolutely.
Am I right?
That's what happens. And another name for intermittent fasting that's a little more sciencey, time restricted eating. That sounds a little bit better to some people. I follow time restricted eating, which means you just eat within a certain window of time.
Mm-hmm.
And, the cat's out of the bag. A lot of people are like, I'm not going to call it intermittent fasting. We'll call it whatever you want. But it is called intermittent fasting in the general landscape. But time restricted eating just maybe sounds a little better to some people, but even though it's the same thing.
Jyn, I got to tell you, I don't care what it sounds like.
Me too.
There's a whole series inside of the podcast, mine, called How We Eat. And somebody with type 1 diabetes comes on and talks about their eating style so that people can see that people eat in all different ways. My theory, my theory being everyone with type 1's using insulin. They just need to understand how to use it for their style. And so I just couldn't find a type 1 who intermittent fasts. And it seemed more technical than just explaining how they did it. So that's why I asked you to come on, and I appreciate it.
Now, have you ever read the book Mastering Diabetes? Have you seen that one?
I don't read as a general rule because I'm a boy. No, because I'm very busy. And I have seen people on the Facebook page talk about that. But to the extent that I understand what it is, I think they eat like a lot of fruit and vegetables.
They're type 1 though. So that's what's why I brought it up. They're type 1 and they are, I don't know if they're completely vegan, but they're very plant-based, low-fat plant-based, but they talk about, why that works so well for a type 1 and also with the intermittent fasting. So they do intermittent fasting and low-fat plant-based.
My thought around eating is that it's sort of like my thought around everything, which there might be a perfect solution, but I don't think you can make everybody do it. So
no, you can't.
I prefer to just say, look, here are all the options. Maybe one of these fits you.
Well, we're all different when it comes to what foods work for our bodies. And science is actually telling us this more and more. The whole field of personalized nutrition is popping up, and they're doing a lot of really interesting research on it. A lot of it comes from our gut microbiome. Mm-hmm. And, we've found, like let's just say glycemic index. We've all heard of the glycemic index, the glycemic response, probably your audience more than most. But it blew my mind when I finally understood that we all have individual glycemic responses. Like the way I respond to a potato might be different from the way you respond to a potato. There's not a universal glycemic response to any food.
Yeah. Do you know if I completely cut sugar out of my life, my GI system doesn't work as well?
Really?
I don't need a ton of it, but I need a little bit of sugar, and then the entire process, start to finish, goes better. That was a really nice
I need to eat starchy carbs. I feel better when I eat starchy carbs. I tried to do keto back in the day before intermittent fasting, the whole summer of 2014. I was like, I'm going to lose weight with keto because then I'll never have to quote diet again. I'm just going to eat this. I'm going to do this forever. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't lose any weight and I felt awful. And I never felt satisfied. I never felt full, even though I was eating so much fat, so much food. And then that was when I said, forget it. I'm just going to do intermittent fasting. I'd heard about it. I knew about it. I dabbled in it, but I couldn't make it stick as a lifestyle. Then finally in 2014, when I switched from keto to intermittent fasting, I reintroduced carbs and I finally started losing weight and I felt so much better. And I'm like, I really do need to eat carbs. And, when I try to avoid them, I do not feel satisfied. So I believe it. We really are all different.
Yeah.
A lot of it goes back to what lives in your gut microbiome.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. When you're not eating, when you're in the fasting part of the intermittent fasting. So the intermittent is I'm intermittently eating, and the fasting is I'm also intermittently fasting. When I'm in the fasting part, if forget type 1s for a second.
Okay.
Type 2s and people who don't have diabetes, is fasting lessening your need for insulin?
Well, it would, yes, because our bodies, people whose bodies produce insulin, our bodies, we release the insulin in response to food and our blood sugar going up. And so with those of us who have a working pancreas and insulin's coming out, like if I were to drink a diet soda right now, for example, my brain says, ooh, we got something sweet coming in, that means sugar, because our brains don't understand, oh no, this is made in the lab, this is artificially sweet. Because all throughout history, everything that came in that tasted sweet was fruit or honey or sugar, or, it was going to give us our blood sugar was going to go up.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't happen with the diet sodas. So our bodies release insulin in response, with the cephalic phase insulin response. And so high levels of insulin are actually anti-lipolytic, which means keep us from tapping into stored fat. So if I just drank diet soda all day long and had no food coming in, I would not be tapping into my fat stores very well, because my insulin would stay up even though no food's coming in, because I'm sending that food signal. We don't want to send food signals to our body when we're not really eating.
Interesting. Okay.
It is very interesting. I learned all of this from reading Dr. Jason Fung's work. I didn't understand that before. We all have been taught that, if it has 0 calories, it's diet, it's good for you. And when I read the obesity code, I was like, oh, no wonder. We all have all these problems. Type 2 diabetes is really a disease that starts with too much insulin. Yeah. We're insulin resistant. It follows, a pattern of insulin resistance. Insulin is too high. Our body becomes more resistant. It all just breaks down over time, leading to insulin dependent type 2 diabetics. My dad is in that situation. But I actually read a great article. I think it was written by a nurse practitioner. I can't remember, but it was when I was researching for Fast Feast Repeat, that talked about hyperinsulinemia and our fasting insulin levels. And again, this is not going to be the same thing for someone with type 1 diabetes, but for someone on the way to type 2 diabetes. And basically, she said, we're testing the wrong thing. We track your A1C and blood sugars, but really, fasted insulin starts to go up even before your A1C starts to go up. So that would be the thing to actually track. We're tracking, she said the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. If everyone knows what their fasted insulin is doing, you could actually take care of that and maybe prevent your A1C from going up, prevent the progression to type 2 diabetes.
My mom
I'm not a doctor, so.
Yeah, listen, people listening to this know this. They're not getting medical advice here from me.
No, not from me.
Yeah, don't worry. There's a big disclaimer at the beginning. So you just didn't hear it.
Okay.
So my mom's 78 years old, and I'm adopted, so she's not biologically my mom, but she started about a year ago seeing her A1C rise, and her father had type 2 diabetes. And I said to her, we're in the middle of the pandemic. And I'm like, Mom, listen, here's what I want you to do. I was like, I put her on an intermittent schedule and a lower carb thing. I think she does maybe not more than maybe 30 carbs a day. And her A1C she's 78 and she wasn't being active. And her A1C dropped down like a point.
Awesome.
Right?
Yeah, intermittent fasting does that also. You got to make sure that during the fast, you're not doing anything that would make your body think food's coming in. So you avoid anything with any kind of sweetener, no matter what they tell you. They're like, oh, no glycemic response. Well, not right. No, avoid any kind of sweetener or food flavor. Don't put lemon in your water. Don't put cucumber in your water. Avoid, fruity herbal teas like apple cinnamon delight, that kind of thing. You don't want your body to think food's coming in.
Jyn, we talk about this on another episode where a CDE who's on named Jenny said that when a person who doesn't have diabetes smells food or even believes they're about to eat, that their insulin starts to work.
Yeah.
To help keep your blood sugar level.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. It's your body sensing these food cues. And that's that cephalic phase insulin response. Your body's like, all right, food is coming in. So, we don't want to worry about things we can't control. Like if you're walking through the mall and you smell Cinnabon, you don't need to freak out. But
I just pictured someone throwing themselves off the second floor into the planter.
Wearing a clothespin on their nose. You don't need to do all that. But just, don't put anything in. You can control what you're drinking. You can control that very easily.
Yeah. So if I'm intermittent fasting, I don't even want to have tea before my eating time starts.
You can have black tea, plain tea, green tea, anything that's made of actual tea.
But the minute I put sugar into it or something like
don't do that.
Boom, I'm done.
You don't want to add anything to it. So a bitter flavor profile, like it's found in black coffee, because I'm drinking my black coffee right now. Mm-hmm. I had to learn to love it because I used to be a heavy stevia user. I would put vanilla cream stevia and cinnamon in my coffee, and it was a delicious treat. And my brain thought it was a delicious treat too, but switching to black coffees made all the difference. But the bitter flavor profile is not associated with, calories are coming in. So your brain does not see that as a food cue.
Can the schedule move about? Like, I can do 10 to 6 one day or noon to 8. Like if I'm going to go out to dinner later, like does that work?
Absolutely. And, you're talking about an 8-hour eating window, and an 8-hour eating window is a great schedule for someone who is not trying to lose weight. Someone who just wants, my husband, for example, he never needed to lose weight. He's a PhD organic chemist, and he does a loose 16-8. He eats lunch, he eats dinner, that's it. And on the weekend, sometimes he might shift it a little earlier and have like a really, like a brunchy kind of lunch.
Yeah.
If he's going to be doing a lot of yard work or something. And it's flexible for him. Now, if you're a woman like me, or if you're trying to lose weight, you may need a shorter eating window. A 5-hour eating window was my weight loss sweet spot. And waiting till later in the day to open my eating window worked better for me. But it's really, you're a study of one. You've got to figure out what feels like a lifestyle to you, because intermittent fasting is not something that you want to start and stop. The metabolic flexibility can be affected if you go long stretches without doing any intermittent fasting. You'll have to go through the adjustment period again. And that's the hardest part. So you want to find a lifestyle that is the right amount of fasting for what feels good to you and allows you to meet whatever the goals are that you have.
That adjustment period, obviously is probably different for other people, but is there an average on how many weeks until you don't feel hungry and it feels normal to you?
It really does vary from person to person. So if anyone is starting intermittent fasting, I would encourage them to read or, Scott, listen to my book, Fast, Feast, Repeat. It's on Audible, and I actually read it to you. I have something in there called the 28-day fast start, and that is your adjustment period. And so that's kind of an average. Now, if you're, pretty metabolically healthy, you might adjust more quickly. Or if you've dabbled in intermittent fasting before, if you're eating, a low carb diet, that would also help your body probably make the transition more quickly. Versus if you're someone who's been battling your weight for a long time, you're type 2 diabetic, you've been obese for a while, it might take your body a couple months. Maybe 28 days is not going to be enough. You may need to tweak what you're eating as well over time.
Yeah.
But it's really going to be different for everybody. You need to, ease in as much as you need to, but understand the goal. You fast clean, which, avoiding any of those food cues. You stick to, plain water, no flavors added. You can have sparkling water as long as it's unflavored, black coffee, plain tea, stick to the clean fast, and then open your eating window, close your eating window, do it again tomorrow. And you really learn to listen to your body. If you ever feel shaky or nauseous during the adjustment period, or really anytime, that may be a sign that your blood sugar is too low. Now, that your audience would be testing their blood sugar, so they would know. In that case, go ahead and eat. Don't be a hero. Don't push through something that if your body's telling you eat, then you eat.
I also have a fairly big caregiver audience too. So there are a lot of people who don't have type 1 that are parents and might need the information as well. Like this is an interesting episode for me. It kind of crosses a lot of different audience members that I don't normally do. What are there? You said to fast clean. What about when you're eating? When you're eating,
you eat how you want to eat. As I already said, there's no one way of eating that works for everyone. They're free. I'll use 2 books, for example. One is Mastering Diabetes that I already mentioned, written by 2 guys. They're type 1. They eat, like I said, it might even be vegan, low fat vegan. And that's what they recommend. Well, then on the flip side, we've got the Diabetes Code written by Dr. Jason Fung, and he recommends that you use a high fat, low carb approach.
Okay.
And both approaches, they're like 180 from each other, but they're working.
Right.
For different people. But what both have in common is the fasting, so that's a commonality between both books. You have intermittent fasting in there, and then during the eating window, you find a way that works well for you. I mean, I eat all the foods I'm also metabolically healthy. I don't have diabetes, and I never was diagnosed with prediabetes or anything, although I was probably on my way at 210 pounds. I had a lot of abdominal fat, and, that's a big sign of metabolic syndrome. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty sure I was, especially looking at my dad, I was on that path. But, I eat all the foods. I feel better when I eat real foods and avoid ultra processed foods, although I still eat ultra processed foods every day. Like I love crackers and chips. I just fit them in around my whole foods instead of making them the centerpiece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're not having a bag of chips.
Oh gosh, no.
Right. So what if I'm going to go down the other side of the spectrum for a second? What if you're a person who's like, I can eat on a schedule, but I'm not going to eat well? Will there be any benefit for them if they're like literally at McDonald's during their eating window?
Well, yes. I like to say the magic happens during the clean fast, although what you eat is important. No, it does matter. You're going to be better. We need to nourish our bodies because that's really what makes them work well. But they did a study with rats, I believe. And so I'm just talking out of the top of my head here. I don't have the details in front of me, but they fed different groups of rats different ways. And they also did intermittent fasting with the rats. And the ones who continued to eat, I think they called it the cafeteria diet. It was, ultra processed foods. Those rats had health benefits from the fasting, wow, even though they ate the junky foods.
A minute ago, you stumbled and you used two different colloquialisms and you blended them. You said, I'm talking out of my head, which I believe is I'm talking out of my ass and talking off the top of my head put together.
I did. I'm also in the South and we don't say bad words.
I know. Well, of course
We're trained as women not to do that. And also I taught school for 28 years. So I often am changing what I'm saying.
I like how you said we don't say them. You just don't say them where people can hear you.
Well, we say them around our trusted people, mm-hmm, and really things have changed over time, but I'm almost 52. So it's hard to unlearn those habits. And again, you have to be super careful in a classroom full of kids.
It was just delightful when I heard the two colloquialisms get blended together and you rolled right through it. And I was like, that's so interesting. Yeah. Am I not asking you anything I should be asking you? Because I really don't know enough about this.
Well, the one thing I guess you might want to ask is it different, or I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to just answer it. Is it different for you, whether you're type 1 or type 2? And the answer is yes, obviously. If you're type 1, you're going to really need to possibly work with your endocrinologist. Hopefully your endocrinologist is knowledgeable about intermittent fasting. More and more of them are. But you may need a different plan than someone who's type 2.
Yeah, of course. Right. Well, that's just, Well, going off of that and telling you something you might never need to know, but might find interesting. So my daughter uses less basal insulin overnight than she does during the day.
Right.
And so I'm imagining that if people want to try this with type 1, they're going to run into a similar situation, but it might not be as stark and helpful as they think, because there are still other things at play that when you have a pancreas working.
So many factors.
Yeah. I mean,
right. And be aware that your blood sugar might go up, like after you work out, for example. If you're fasting and you work out, you might see your blood sugar pop up because your muscles are dumping that glycogen. And and so you still have to be on top of that, even though no food has come in. You do have to keep your eye on it.
I just recorded a variable episode the other day that may or may not be up by the time this goes up, that discusses the difference for type 1s between anaerobic exercise and aerobic exercise and what happens to your blood sugar in both situations. And when you tax your muscles, lift heavy weights, you are most definitely going to see a blood sugar rise afterwards.
Yeah.
Right. I'm even talking about growth hormone for kids, hormones from, menstrual cycles, like all this stuff is not going to be completely squelched by, as far as I can tell through my daughter, through a fasting schedule. But what I can tell you is that during my daughter's eating schedule, she eats about like every other 17-year-old kid on the planet.
Yeah.
Some days it's a salad and she looks like a dainty lady in Downton Abbey. And other days she's like, I need nachos and cheese. And I was like, okay. And then you end up at some like fast food place and she's dipping nachos into a giant vat of what, I don't even know what it is. They say it's queso, but I mean, come on.
Yeah.
What does that even mean? But so she eats sort of, off and on like that, but her weight is very stable.
That's good. Yeah. And a lot of that is her age as she gets older.
Yeah, no, I know. But I'm just saying that I also know children her age that don't eat on a fasting schedule and mix stuff like that in, and they don't have the amount of success. She also exercises, and
right.
I don't want to paint her as a bad eater. She's I would call her an American eater.
Right.
But if there's a more healthy side to that, she's off to that side a little bit.
That's good.
She'll snack on carrots.
Right. Oh, that's good.
That kind of an idea.
Getting in those vegetables. That's important. I was raised, during the time when we just thought if you just took a vitamin, you'd be fine. Who needs to eat vegetables? Take your vitamins. And so I've had to learn a lot about food. I have a new book coming out called Cleanish. It's coming out January of 2022. It's available for pre-order now. But it really, as I was doing research for that book, it really helped me see, oh gosh, we need more than just that vitamin pill.
Mm-hmm.
We need to nourish our bodies with the, fruits and vegetables. And so I'm making even more of an effort than I was before.
Right.
Eat the rainbow, not the Skittles, but the real rainbow.
Wrong rainbow. Well, I tell people all the time that, you can figure out how to use insulin for almost anything, but just because you know how to bolus for Fruity Pebbles doesn't mean you should have them every day.
Right.
Right. And that eating less processed food. Also, I bring it up here a lot, Jyn, I cut out oils and it made a big difference in my life.
Oh yeah. Those inflammatory oils really, I have a co-host on the Intermittent Fasting podcast, and she's been talking about those for a long time. And I was like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to hear about that. But when I started really digging into the science, she was right that so many of those seed oils that are the modern oils are just not good for us. So I stick to olive oil at home, and avocado oil is also a better choice.
All I have is I only use cold pressed, not processed olive oil. That's the only thing that's in the house, with the exception, if I want to be honest for a second, there's a small can of canola oil, which is I found not good, but I need it to pop popcorn. And other than that, it has no use in our life. I can't see.
It's true.
Yeah. So, and popcorn's a thing around here. So, and I make it like it's 1948 in a pot with a lid,
Yeah. And put real butter on it.
Oh, if you're going to have popcorn, I don't understand going halfway.
No, real butter and salt. That's delicious.
But
yeah, ultra processed foods are a problem. I really think if we could do two things for the world, everyone stopped eating ultra processed foods and we stopped drinking all these garbage beverages, which are really actually point one would take care of, because you go to the beverage aisle of any grocery store, Mega Mart, Costco, anywhere. That right there is so many of our health problems. Everything we've got artificial flavors, sweeteners. It's terrible. But if we all just started eating real food, I think the health of the world would just be changed, just boom like that.
So the people who listen to the show mostly probably know that a number of weeks ago, I had to go. You'll probably enjoy this as a person who has a podcast. My son had to go from the East Coast to the West Coast, and he had to stay there for 5 weeks to work out. He's training for a baseball thing. And the first week he was going to be there, we didn't have lodging for him. And I was going to be with him the first week, and we just couldn't set up lodging. And a listener of the show put us up in their house for a week. Which I know even probably sounds crazy to you, but I had.
It does not sound crazy to me, because I've had, events with my community. We went on cruises, and so, yeah.
No kidding.
Pre-COVID.
So the reason I'm telling you this is because my son and I lived with this beautiful family for a week, but they don't drink anything but water.
Yeah.
And by the time we were there 5 or 6 days, I started looking in the mirror and thinking, like, I'm losing weight.
Yep.
But they eat more than I do. And so I was eating on their schedule, not like times a day, but like they have a big meal every night for dinner, like kind of thing. Like there are nights I don't eat very much and things like that. And I was like losing weight really quickly. Right. And so I got home and I said to my wife, I was like, can we make one small change? There's always Snapple in the house, Diet Snapple. I was like, can we stop buying that?
So, that's yep. I would absolutely not drink that.
Yeah.
Just drink water.
Right.
Really, I really think if every person, whether you're fasting or not, only drank plain water with no flavors added, black coffee, plain tea, don't add anything to it, I think the health of the world would just
blossom.
change amazingly. Yep.
Well, so then I got a little sneaky, and I was like, well, let me like try to make this a little better for the people in the house. And I brought in like a bubbly water, but it has a flavor in it.
Yeah.
And I'm not losing weight the way I did when I was at those people's houses. I
promise you, stick to the unflavored, the plain. Like I have, the LaCroix and the blue can that's unflavored.
Okay.
I'll drink that. I also like San Pellegrino mineral water, no flavor added.
Yeah.
And, I like the bubbles.
How about that? I just all occurred to me as you were talking, honestly, over the last 15 minutes. I was like, oh, I cut out the Snapple, but I didn't replace it with just pure water. How about that?
Yeah. And even, forget about what I talked about before with the cephalic phase insulin response. The diet sweetener or the artificial sweeteners affect our gut microbiome in a negative way. We're learning more about that. Mm-hmm. And so much of our health stems from the gut. Even like what your glycemic response is, it's related to what lives in your gut. So, we want to encourage a healthy population in our gut, and they thrive on the real foods. And the ultra processed foods cultivate an entirely different gut microbiome that is going to lead you towards, unhealthy outcomes. And we see that over and over and over. Every study confirms it. There's never been a study that shows that ultra processed foods lead to better health outcomes over time.
Two things come to mind. Once I had a really beautiful doctor on, and she talked about just thyroid stuff because autoimmune things kind of travel in packs. So if you have type 1, you might have a thyroid, you might have celiac. Like there's other things that would pop up and they'd at least be in the family. So I add them into the show. And she was talking about gut health. And she's like, it's one of those things we can't really quantify yet the way we want to, but there's something there and it's really important.
It really is. I'm following a researcher. His name is Dr. Tim Spector. He's out of the UK, and he is doing a lot of work with personalized nutrition right now. And he studied identical twins and, a lot of genetic research, but he's really focused on the gut now. And it's just astonishing how important it is.
Well, I don't know how much this connects, but I told you I took all the other oils out of my life, which means now I won't eat something that's deep fried, that kind of stuff. But we ended up in one of our like kind of local bar restaurants recently. And I just stayed away from things that were fried. But then someone didn't finish their chicken wings. And I had a couple of them, and I recognized, and I'm sorry if this is too much information for people, but I recognized after I ate them, I am now on a countdown to need to be near a bathroom because my stomach is not accustomed to the oil anymore.
That's true. I went, here at the beach with my family, we went to, my dad really wanted to go to a seafood buffet. And I was like, okay, we'll find, keep the dad happy. And so we had the whole family and we went, and, everything there was fried pretty much, the crab legs, dipping them in that fake butter. It was, not the kind of food I would normally eat, but you're right. The next day I was in the bathroom more than normal. Yeah. It was that food. And then I was so puffy. I felt inflamed, but I'm, as I talked about in my new book titled Cleanish, I'm cleanish. I'm not, obsessive, like going to sit there with my family and refuse to eat because this is not what I would normally eat. Yeah. Or, go munching just, iceberg lettuce off the salad bar. I was like, okay, this is not what I do normally, but I'm going to eat this food and it'll be okay.
I'm learning a lot from you because you and I are really similar, except I didn't stick to the intermittent fasting. I'm ish around it. Like I'm not.
You're intermittent fasting ish.
I'm not eating after dark kind of things, but I am eating earlier in the day than I should be. But I was going to say about the ish part. This weekend coming up, July 4th,
right?
And we're getting together at my mother-in-law's house for the first time in a long time. And I said, well, I'm going to bring a pizza oven and I'll make pizzas, but I'm going to make the dough from hand, like absolutely from scratch. I'll use 00, like finely milled flour, which, believe it or not, impacts me differently than buying like flours that are milled the American way.
I do believe it. Yeah.
Super interesting. And so when you come down to it, what this will end up being is the flour, the dough is going to be nothing more than flour, salt, yeast, and water. And then I will spend a little extra money to put a higher quality cheese on it.
Right.
And a couple of toppings. There'll be like mushrooms. They have some, might be a little sausage for somebody. That's really going to be it. And my body will process that pizza no problem.
Absolutely. You're so right. I actually mill my own wheat into flour on occasion and bake from super scratch. And it's just such a different experience that really makes a huge difference. When people are like, oh, pizza is so bad for you. Well, not if you're making it like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I ordered like a Pizza Hut pizza with Lord knows what they even put on that.
Right. No, exactly what I'm thinking. Like I'm thinking of that pizza right now, building it in my head. And I know every base ingredient that's in there. And I mean, down to the fact that it's only that thing that's in there. There's nothing else involved in it. And it's easier on my system.
100%. It really is astonishing. So, that's the thing. You can eat all the foods you love. I mean, I eat potatoes all the time. But, when I make them at home, I'll cut a potato up, toss it in olive oil, throw it in the oven, roast it. And it's like having fries, but they're roasted in my oven.
Yeah.
And I don't feel bad. However, the first night I was at the beach when I drove here, I went over to the little beach bar because I always like to go there one time. And I had a burger and fries and I felt like garbage.
Yeah. There's got to be.
It made my stomach hurt. I'm like, I knew these fries would make my stomach hurt. Why did I do it?
Jyn, do you ever talk about that on your show, or do you ever think about it in your personal life? Like, I know everything you've said today makes 100% sense to me. I've seen it happen in my own life. Why will later today I walk past a candy dish and put a gumdrop in my mouth? Like, why? What happened to me when I was little, Jyn?
Well, because we're humans, and we're not living the life of perfection, right? It's not easy to do that, and it doesn't feel good. But you do start, like, I've gotten better at thinking about, well, how will I feel later if I have that? Do I really want to go through that? Like I've gone through going through menopause. Alcohol affects me more dramatically now than it used to. So, used to every night at the beach, definitely I would have at least a couple glasses of wine, but I don't sleep as well when I drink alcohol. So now I'm like here at the beach, not drinking anything.
Yeah.
Because I want to sleep well and I want to wake up and feel refreshed. So, we just start to prioritize wanting to feel good.
I feel like I'm going to mature right when I die, and then it's going to be too late. Like, like my wife said the other day, like they were out shopping, my wife and my daughter, and they found this little restaurant and they were like, come over. So I came and I'm eating, and I'm the entire time I'm eating, all I can think is, this isn't going to work out. Right. And then I couldn't sleep that night.
Yeah.
I was up at like 4 a.m. awake. And like, I still felt like I was processing my dinner that I had 9 hours before that. And it just was, all I could think when I was laying there is like, you're a pretty bright guy. Like, when are you going to like stop?
Well, we can be slow learners because, food is a sensory experience and there's so much more to it than just what you're putting in your mouth. You're there with your family and you have these feelings associated with it. And, like me in that beach bar, I've come to the beach. The first thing I do is head over to the beach bar and have a burger.
My wife will say,
if I didn't have the fries, I would have felt okay. I just know that.
Yeah.
Maybe next time I won't order the fries.
So it really is about some like real like memories that just the food like relates to. And obviously food's relatable to memories. It's when it happens too frequently that it ends up being unhealthy for you. Like my wife will say, if I'm at a movie and there's not popcorn, I might as well not be at the movie. And I don't understand that, but obviously there's a way she grew up that makes a movie for her.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. That's interesting. It really is. I genuinely appreciate you doing this, but I don't want to miss anything. Like I said, I feel like a bit of a neophyte here, but do you think we covered, if somebody listened back to this, would they understand intermittent fasting enough to understand if they wanted to know more about it?
I think so. Really, it's not scary. It just sounds scary. And there's a saying, I didn't make it up. I don't even know where it originated. But diets are easy in contemplation and hard in execution. We all know that from diets we tried before. Well, intermittent fasting is the exact opposite. It's hard in contemplation, but easy in execution. It sounds like it's going to be so hard and you're going to, be starving and hangry. But once your body adjusts, it is so much easier than trying to diet all the time or eat frequent small meals. It frees up your mind to do other things. You have great sustained energy. And you're like, why have I not always eaten this way? In fact, one of the things I hear from people all the time is that, this is how I used to eat when I was a teenager or when I went to college. But then everybody said, you got to eat breakfast. It's the most important meal of the day. So I forced myself to eat it so I would be, quote, healthy. And that's when my problems all started.
Yeah.
And a lot of people really look back to that and they're like, I had a grandma and she just would sip her coffee all morning. And then she had a tiny little lunch and ate dinner with grandpa. And she was healthy until she died at age of 95. And so, everybody's got, stories like that.
You make me think that of something I said to my wife. I was like, we were healthier when we had less money. And I feel, and the money is about being able to afford food, and in this context, and being able to have something around always that you mean to have, like having options in your refrigerator.
Well, yeah, and we've also been trained to fear hunger. Like, you better have a snack in your purse in case you're like out shopping and you need to eat something real quick.
Yeah. I have to agree with what you just said before, and I'll tell you, I'm motivated to do this and stick to it better, because I, after a couple of days, had to almost remind myself to start eating at noon.
Right.
And I did feel terrific. I will be honest. My back
and
didn't
you do
hurt
not
as much.
have to start eating at noon. Would you like to lose a few pounds, or you feel like you're exactly where you'd like to be?
Oh, you're delightful. No, I should lose a few pounds.
Okay. Well, I don't know.
How lovely.
If you would like to lose a few pounds, then maybe you don't open your window till 3. You have a little snack and then later a great dinner.
Interesting. Okay. Listen, I'm up for doing something. I'm 50, Jyn,
right.
in a couple of weeks, and I do have that underlying fear that I'm going to tip over some edge that I can't crawl back over again.
Well, when is your birthday?
July 12th.
Yeah, I'm July 23rd. So.
Oh, happy birthday. My daughter's the 22nd.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Almost a birthday twin.
Yeah, we're so close. Close enough. Well, I let me first say I really appreciate this, and I will absolutely put links to your books in the show notes, and when I do an intro, I'll do a nice
awesome
buttoning up.
And I think you'll enjoy Cleanish. I know that you said you don't read, but listen, I'll be recording the audio eventually. It'll be out at the same time. It'll be out in January as well. I just haven't recorded it yet, but listen to parts of Fast Feast Repeat on audio, and when Cleanish comes out, I learned so many things. I thought I knew a lot, but as I was researching, I learned so much more, and it really just has inspired me. The subtitle is Eat Mostly Clean, Live Mainly Clean, and Unlock Your Body's Natural Ability to Self-Clean. And, it talks all about our toxic load and even the things we're putting on our bodies and how that affects us. We're just in a different kind of world now than, 100, 200 years ago.
Wow. No, I agree. You just said, I'm going to let you go, but put on your bodies, meaning like hand creams and stuff like that can affect you?
Yeah. Yeah. It all, goes in through the skin. We know that it does, because everybody's seen someone use a therapeutic patch for something or other. Mm-hmm. It's a great medication delivery system. So if medications can be delivered through patches, then what you put on your skin is delivered in the exact same way. So, our toxic loads are just crazy these days. Babies are born with toxins in their cord blood. I could go down this rabbit hole forever, but it really, what I learned was shocking to me, even though I thought I knew a lot. And it really inspired me to make a difference with, like I said, I'm Cleanish, but I make changes wherever I can. So I can still, live a life where if I want to go to the beach bar and have fries, I can, and still be healthy. The fasting helps with that, with the self-cleaning that happens during the fasted state. But there's other things. The fruits and vegetables help our bodies self-clean too.
Wow. I've really enjoyed this. First, let me thank Jyn for coming on the show and sharing all of her knowledge about intermittent fasting. For anyone who cares, on the day this episode comes out, and I don't know what the date is, you're going to have to look at the calendar. Actually, that won't help you, because if you look at it the day after it comes out. Anyway, I think it's going to come out like the end of July, 2021. I'm going to start an intermittent fasting lifestyle. I'm going to start it back up again. And I'm going to stick with it for at least 30 days. So if you're on the private Facebook group, I'll be reporting there about it. So I'm using this to hold myself accountable. If the first 30 days goes well, I'll extend it. Oh, you might not know where the private Facebook group is. It's called Juicebox Podcast Type 1 Diabetes. I think there's a link in the show notes. If there's not, definitely you can get to it through juiceboxpodcast.com or just searching Juicebox Podcast Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. Don't forget to check Jyn out. She's got, like she said, 3 podcasts. I said 2 at the beginning, but I think it's 3. She's got a ton of great books. They're all available on what they call the Amazon.com. You could head over there and just type in her name, Jyn Stevens. It's with a PH. I could do it with you real quick. You people are so needy. Hold on a second. I know no one asked. Ginstevens. And then when you hit enter, it's on your keyboard. It pops right up. All of her books. Fast, Feast, Repeat. She wasn't wrong. It's a bestseller. And others. Don't Delay. Living an Intermittent Fasting Lifestyle, Cleanish. Wow, she's prolific, this Jyn Stevens. Now, if you go to juiceboxpodcast.com and do a little scrolling down, you'll see all of the How We Eat series right there. Vegan, carnivore, plant-based, gluten-free, low-carb, Bernstein, FODMAP, keto, flexitarian, today, intermittent fasting, and there are more coming. People have all different kinds of ways they eat, and I find each and every one of them interesting. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Thank you for sharing the show with friends. Doctors, thank you for sharing it with your patients. Patients, thank you for sharing it with your doctors. You guys are terrific. I couldn't do this without you. All the great ratings and reviews and emails and messages, they mean the world to me. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.